Awesome. Thank you for recording the meeting. The part of the agency that I'm in is fairly small. It is, my job is primarily to help the public with human wildlife conflicts. So think of almost any terrestrial species that you can think of in Florida, with the exception of alligators. My staff and I are tasked to give technical assistance and advice to the public on how to prevent conflict. So think bears, bats, sandhill cranes, snakes, iguanas, raccoons, foxes, and our star for the evening, sort of, coyotes. Coyotes are probably the thing that I talk to the public about the most, and that is what we're going to talk about this evening. So I'm going to just go ahead and jump right on into this coyote presentation. We are often asked, well, why are coyotes in Florida? They didn't used to be here. And there's some truth to that. When the Spanish first came and colonized North America, there were no coyotes in Florida or along the eastern seaboard, but we did have the red wolf in Florida. Red wolves were extirpated, meaning they're locally extinct. They were wiped out of Florida by 1920, mostly due to human persecution. Wolves are important to the coyote story because where you tend to have high wolf populations, you tend to have lower coyote populations because wolves compete with coyotes, and they will predate on coyotes. So eradication of wolves is really important to why coyotes are in Florida. So we covered the red wolf. So the red wolf was wiped out of Florida and the eastern seaboard by the 1920s. Gray wolves were historically found in the western United States and were removed from most of their historic range. The demise of the wolf is one of the reasons that allowed coyotes to begin moving from the western United States to the eastern United States. Another reason coyotes moved from the western US to the eastern US is because of our conversion to an agricultural landscape. Scenes like this, big open pastures and meadows and fields, this is where coyotes like to be. Now you can find them in any environment, but this is their favorite. So as humans started converting to ag, especially along the Mississippi River Delta, this started allowing coyotes to move from the western United States to the eastern United States. And so if we look at a map of how quickly coyotes were able to expand their range through North America, you can see on this map the colors by decade, just how fast they were able to move. So in red was their historic range. And as we started converting to ag and systematically removing wolves from the landscape, coyotes started expanding their range. I want to point out that today, or as of last I heard, coyotes were in Panama and almost to the Panama Canal. They are about to expand their range into South America. So what's important? Why am I spending so much time on this? This is the only mid-sized mammal I can think of that has been heavily persecuted for centuries that is expanding its range as quickly as it is today. I mentioned a few moments ago about wolves being historically removed through the landscape for centuries. It wasn't just wolves that humans were trying to systematically remove. It was a campaign to remove predators wherever they existed. So wolves, bears, alligators, cougars, or mountain lions, or Florida panthers, coyotes were also caught up in this. So coyotes were heavily persecuted for centuries. They were shot at, they were poisoned, they were shot from helicopters, they were trapped. We're talking probably hundreds of thousands of individual coyotes were wiped out in the last couple of centuries. Yet, coyotes are really the only mid-sized mammal that has been able to expand its range this quickly across North America. That says a lot about them. This is an animal that has adapted to survive. So coyotes are now found in the continental United States. They're also now found in Alaska, and they have almost moved into South America. When we look about the range expansion specifically in Florida, the first research project that documented coyotes was by Brady and Campbell in 1983. And these two researchers found coyotes in all of the counties you see shaded in green. And I'd like to point out, if my cursor will work, the county right here. So this is Orange County. This is the Orlando metropolitan area. So coyotes have been living in the Orlando or Disney area for more than 30 years now. Woody and Hardesty in 1990 recorded coyotes in all of these counties. So by 1990, there were coyotes in Okeechobee County and Broward County. Since survey data done by Dr. Main with the University of Florida confirmed coyotes in Sarasota and Volusia counties. Carcass data by Dr. Main confirmed coyotes in Brevard and St. Lucie and Indian River counties. And finally, personal communication with FWC and with the University of Florida has confirmed coyotes in all 67 counties in the state. So it really doesn't matter where you are, whether you're on the beach or whether you're in Belle Glade, you have a really good shot of running into a coyote wherever you are in the state of Florida. Their most southern observation to date was in 2011 in Key Largo. So there's a couple important things about Key Largo. One is that, last I checked, that's where the largest feral cat colony in the state was located. So that's likely what drew the coyotes from mainland Florida onto Key Largo. The other thing about Key Largo that I'm sure you're aware of is Key Largo is an island. So a lot of folks will scratch their heads and go, well, wait a second, how did the coyote get there? Coyotes, it turns out, are strong swimmers. And this is a picture that one of our partners took in the Lake Worth Lagoon in Palm Beach County. And look at how far out the coyote is in the Lake Worth Lagoon. He's far enough out there where you can see a channel marker in the back behind him. So coyotes are very strong swimmers. They can swim and get to some of our barrier islands, and they exist on them. So we've gotten calls about coyotes on Hutchinson Island, on Gasparilla, Siesta Key, Sanibel, and Key Largo. Now, coyotes will also use the path of least resistance. So if they don't have to swim, if they could use a road or a bridge, they will do that too. So I want to give you a little bit of biology about coyotes. I don't want to bore you with a ton of biology, but I want to talk a little bit about coyote biology so you will understand kind of what they're doing in your communities if you happen to see one. So coyotes are omnivorous. It means they're going to eat just about everything. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment. They are highly adaptable. This is one of the most intelligent wildlife species that's living in our area today. Adult coyotes range between 25 and 40 pounds, so they're about the size of a mid-sized dog. Their range size is variable. So if you were to encounter a coyote out in Pahokee, it's going to have about a 15 square mile home range or territory. But if you were to encounter a coyote in Jupiter, its territory size is going to be way smaller. It's only going to be about 3 square miles. The reason their territory gets smaller in urban areas is because where there is people, there's more food resources for coyotes. They don't need such a big territory. They can find everything they need in a small space. And that has to do with us, with humans. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Coyotes mate in the winter. They have pups in the spring. So if you have adult breeding coyotes in your area, they should have pups right about now. Litter size is on average 6. But this is dependent on food. The more food that's available, the more pups they can have. The less food that's available, the less pups they can have. And that's true for most wildlife species. What's not true of most wildlife species, and what makes coyotes especially unique, is coyotes are monogamous. They mate for life. They have very strong pair bonds between the male and the female and their offspring. Also, unlike some other wildlife species or domestic species, both parents are caring for their young. So if you think about domestic dogs for a moment, domestic dogs are not monogamous at all. And the male domestic dog has no parental responsibilities one bit. The male coyote is very involved in raising his offspring. So that makes them fairly unique in the wildlife world. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that coyotes will eat almost anything. And, in Florida, we wanted to know what was sustaining them. So what we did is we did a diet study between 2011 and 2014, where we were collecting roadkill coyotes, hunter shot coyotes, or trapped coyotes, and we were looking at their gut contents to determine what they were eating. So not surprisingly, 31% of their diet is mammal related. So that's things like rabbits and squirrels and mice and rats. What was surprising was vegetation. I did not expect coyotes to rely so much on vegetative components. But what really got our attention in the study was this one, anthropogenic. Anthropogenic is human-related foods. And at this study, it was about 10% of what we found in coyote stomachs, which was much more than we anticipated. So the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you some things that we actually pulled out of coyote stomachs. And I am fully cognizant we're in the dinner hour. These pictures are not graphic. I wouldn't do that to you, I promise. But I want to show you these pictures to show you just how variable their diet is. So first picture, this is dog food. This was found in the stomach of a coyote from Pensacola. So dog food is very telling. Dog food is high in calories. It is manufactured to be appetizing to get animals to eat it. The coyote probably did nothing to get it. Well, he did something, right? He got into a bowl of food, or maybe someone was intentionally feeding this animal, but he didn't have to expend any energy. It's not like he went and ran down a rabbit. He ate dog food. So this is a really good representation of why coyotes are coming into urban environments, because they can find human-related foods. They don't have to spend a lot of energy to get it, and they get a big reward with the calorie count. Next picture is cooked chicken that was found in a coyote that was hit by a car in Pinellas County. So if you're not familiar with Pinellas County on the west coast of Florida, that's where St. Pete and Clearwater is. Pinellas is the most densely human populated county in the state, like 3,000 people per square mile last I checked. If a coyote can live in Pinellas County, trust me, they can live anywhere. But this coyote managed to find cooked chicken. How did he do that? Did he get into some trash? Did somebody intentionally feed the animal? I don't know, but this is a great, these two pictures right here again are why coyotes are choosing to live around people. Okay, next picture. This is a coyote's stomach that's stained purple, which is weird. What we think is going on here is this coyote was eating pokeweed. Pokeweed is a native weedy plant. It has bright purple berries on it. It's really important for songbird migration. We think this particular coyote ate so much of it that it stained its stomach purple. So that's some of the vegetative components that we were surprised to see. Here's a McDonald's wrapper. Yeah, they'll eat trash too, unfortunately. And look where this coyote came from. This coyote was hit by a car in the Ocala National Forest. That's a huge tract of public land, yet this animal was still able to find human-related foods. How did he do it? Did somebody bring trash into the national forest that he found? Did he hit the dumpster maybe that was bordering the national forest? I don't know, but this one was another surprise to us. Here is another candy or food wrapper. This is a candy wrapper. So clearly this coyote ate this around Easter, since this is a mini eggs wrapper, but look where this coyote came from too. This coyote came from a state park. So again, public land, and yet the coyotes are still able to find human-related foods. This is my favorite picture from the whole study. This is a total of 47 small mammals found in the stomach of just one coyote. That's amazing. These all look like mice to me. And to give you a reference point, it takes a coyote about 5 hours to digest its meal. So this animal ate nearly 50 mice in the few hours before it died. That's incredible. If only they would just stick to rodents, right? And finally, I have one picture left. This is a substantial amount of insects, and I'm not sure if you can read what the card says. It's a little small, but that says roaches, which is really gross. But again, this coyote ate so many roaches. Look at that big pile of it. Again, the point in showing you all of these pictures is to show you they will really eat anything that's available to them. This is part of the reason they've been so successful at surviving and expanding their range, even though they've been persecuted for centuries. Now, every coyote that came into our diet study was weighed, and I put together a graph to show you what the actual weights of those coyotes were. Most of them were falling in the average, which is 25 to 30 pounds. The reason I'm telling you this is because my staff and I are constantly getting phone calls where people tell us that they're seeing 60 and 70 and 80 pound coyotes. They're either grossly exaggerating or they might be seeing a dog. There are dogs that are bred to look like coyotes, or they're hybrids with wolves. So there's some dogs that have some very wolf or coyote-like characteristics, but we're just not seeing 60 and 70 and 80 pound coyotes in Florida. I will say Coyotes do a very good job of making themselves look larger than they really are. They've got long legs, and I thought my cat would want to come make an appearance, and he's trying to, so hopefully he'll stay over there. The coyotes have long legs. They're kind of fuzzy, especially when they're shedding, so they can make themselves really look bigger than they are. But on average, coyotes are weighing between 25 and 30 pounds, so they're about the size of a mid-sized dog. All right, so are there anything good about having coyotes in Florida? Do coyotes offer any ecological benefits to being here? Well, certainly one benefit of having coyotes in the state is their aesthetic value. If you can catch a scene like this, where an adult is raising their young at the den, it is quite endearing. Some folks really like seeing coyotes because it reminds them of living close to nature and being outdoors. Some people also really don't like seeing or hearing coyotes. Coyotes are really vocal. A lot of times they'll howl at night or when a siren goes by or a train. Some people really like that. It reminds them of having a connection to nature. Some people really don't. But coyotes absolutely contribute to our aesthetic value of wildlife. And so they do benefit us in that way. Another thing that benefits the, oh my gosh, can't speak today, that our ecosystem benefits from for coyotes is that they can help to control smaller predators. So if you remember, I mentioned earlier in the top of the presentation that red wolves used to be in Florida and were extirpated by the 1920s. There are some scientists that think coyotes are filling the role that the red wolf left behind, since Florida has been without a mid-level canine predator for so long. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Let's go with raccoons for a moment. Raccoons are really good at one thing besides getting in the garbage. Raccoons are really good nest predators. That's their niche. That's what they're looking for. They are looking for nests and eggs. That's their thing. If coyotes are helping to control raccoons, they're indirectly helping some of our native, endangered, and threatened species, like bobwhite quail, like loggerhead shrikes, like mottled ducks, like roseate spoonbills. Now, this does not mean if a coyote came across a bobwhite quail nest that he wouldn't eat it. He'd totally eat it. But they're not searching for the bobwhite quail like they are searching for the raccoons instead. So because of this, some scientists think that coyotes are providing more ecological balance to Florida and filling that role that the red wolf left behind, which is pretty interesting. But what about the negatives? Are there bad things about having coyotes in Florida? Well, they could compete with our native predators, like Florida panthers. Florida panthers like to eat kind of the same thing that coyotes like to eat. Panthers like to eat hogs, and they like to eat deer. Coyotes also like to eat hogs and deer, but coyotes are typically targeting the younger age class deer and hog, while panthers are typically going after the older or adult age class deer and hog. We also know that coyotes and panthers don't really like to live in the same habitat. Remember I mentioned earlier, coyotes like big open fields and pastures and meadows. Panthers like really dense habitat, so they don't often cross paths. And even though the Florida panther is still an endangered species, their population has slowly been increasing. We would have expected that if coyotes were negatively impacting panthers, that the panther population would decline, and it is not. So because of those factors, we do not think that coyotes are competing with panthers at this time. However, we have another native cat here, the bobcat. Bobcats like to live in the same environments as coyotes, and they definitely eat the same things. So University of Florida wanted to understand how bobcats and coyotes were interacting with each other. And so what they did is they put radio collars on both bobcats and coyotes on the Avon Park bombing range in the center of the state. And so what you're looking at in this funky weird map, in red, you're looking at home ranges of bobcats. And in blue, you're looking at home ranges of coyotes. And so almost immediately you can take away that they're overlapping by a lot in some cases. What you're looking at in the striped area, like right here, this is representing a bobcat's denning site. And in the polka dots here, this is representing a coyote's denning site. And what you can probably take away pretty quick is their denning sites are not overlapping with each other. Sometimes they're bordering each other and they're backing up to one another, like right here, but they're not overlapping. So what this means is that they're coexisting. Bobcats and coyotes are living in the same environment, eating the same food sources, but they're not driving each other out, which is pretty interesting. Now, nobody has replicated this study in an urban environment to my knowledge. However, I have some anecdotal evidence that coyotes and bobcats are likely behaving the same way. My staff and I were helping a gentleman who had his domestic turkey eaten by a wild animal. So he was trying to figure out what animal was responsible. We put up some trail cameras. And in the same evening, we got a bobcat and a coyote on that camera, which again, that's suggesting that they're living together, that they're coexisting, and they're not driving each other out of the habitat where they're living. So based on all this, we don't think coyotes are negatively impacting bobcats either. Now, one potentially negative impact for coyotes is they can predate upon rare and endangered species. And you might be going, well, wait a second, you just said they could help some endangered and rare and endangered species. And that's true, they can, but they can also harm some rare and endangered species in some situations, especially animals that are ground nesters, like sea turtles, burrowing owls, species of shorebirds, and gopher tortoises. However, they're not typically seeking out these species like they're seeking out armadillos or opossums or raccoons, who are more efficient nest predators. If coyotes are really impacting sea turtles on the beaches, beach managers may choose to trap a coyote for that reason. However, they have to consider, if they're removing the coyote off the beach and the coyote is the number one predator, they might be opening the door up for raccoons and opossums and armadillos, who are more efficient nest predators, to come in behind them. So this is a challenge that a lot of managers are facing across the state today. Now, certainly, maybe one of the more ugly parts about coyotes is the human-related conflicts. That's likely what brought you to the presentation this evening, and that's what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the presentation today. So I'll start with, in my opinion, I think coyotes have an undeserved public reputation because of some myths and misconceptions about them. So I'd like to clear up some stuff that a lot of people think about coyotes that aren't necessarily correct. One is their size, and I mentioned it earlier, they're not nearly as big as most folks think they are. The second is pack. I really don't like using the word pack when I talk about coyotes. When I think of pack, to me, I think of a bunch of feral dogs that get together and do bad stuff, like run livestock, a bunch of unrelated individuals. That's not how it is with coyotes. If you're not a member of that coyote's family, you're not in their territory. They hold their territory against any other intruder coyote that's not part of their family group. So I really don't like using the term pack with coyotes. It really is instead, it's a family group. So if you ever see more than one coyote together, you're looking at the alpha male and female, or you may be looking at one of the adults with their offspring from the year, and they will move together, no doubt. They'll move together, they'll hunt together sometimes, especially the adults with the young coyotes, but just know that it's a family. So for example, in this picture that we took on a golf course in Clearwater, the coyote in the center here is more than likely the alpha male. One of these two behind him is likely the alpha female, and the other is their offspring from the previous year. Sometimes one of their offspring will hang back and help mom and dad raise the next generation, which is kind of interesting. Coy dogs and coy wolves are another one. So a coy dog is when a coyote and a dog breed together. Coy dogs are really difficult to get. Dogs' breeding cycles and coyotes' breeding cycles don't match. Coyotes breed in the winter, dogs tend to breed in the spring and in the fall. Additionally, I mentioned earlier, coyotes are monogamous. They have really strong pair bonds where dogs don't. And the male dog has no parental responsibilities at all. If a female coyote chose a male dog to breed with, her litter is less likely to survive because that male is not going to hang around and help her raise the offspring. Coy dogs have been recorded in the western United States. They have not been recorded in Florida. Coy wolves is another one. So a coy wolf is when a coyote and a wolf breed together and have offspring. There is a lot of debate up and down the scientific community right now trying to determine if coy wolves exist. And there's a lot of research going on right now too, along the eastern seaboard, trying to answer this question. However, there's no evidence that we have coy wolves in Florida for one maybe simple reason. There are no wolves here for them to breed with. All of our coyotes in Florida that we have studied are mimicking the size of the coyotes from out west. Disease is another one. So don't take me wrong here. Coyotes can carry diseases. However, just because you see one that's a different color, like this black coyote, or if you see one out during the day, that does not mean it's a diseased animal. Coyotes will come out during daylight hours if they have young that they're trying to feed. They might be working some overtime, or if they're not getting constantly pressured by people, or if their food is coming out during the day. Now, again, don't take me wrong here. Coyotes can absolutely carry diseases. They can carry the same diseases that you would vaccinate your dog for. So they can get rabies, they can get mange, they can get distemper and heartworm and tapeworm and all of those things. So that's a good reason not to let your pets interact with coyotes. But just because you see one in an unusual location or out during the day is not an indicator of disease. And finally, Hollywood, wily coyotes always make us think that coyotes are up to no good, but they're really just trying to survive in a pretty tough environment, just like most other wildlife are. One other area of human conflict, like with coyotes, is predation of livestock. Now, not every coyote does this. This is a learned behavior. And for smaller operations, for ranchers or farmers to have sheep or chickens or goats, there are some simple things they can do to prevent coyotes and other wildlife, like bobcats, from predating their livestock. This is using good fencing, using electric fencing, using corrals, or using guard animals. One guard animal that's been a bit popular lately are donkeys. Donkeys really hate coyotes and other canines and will run canines off people's properties. Llamas will do the same too. And again, this is a learned behavior. Not every coyote will predate livestock. But perhaps the biggest thing, or the most common thing that we're getting phone calls and worry from the public about, is urban coyotes and pet loss. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this part. Coyotes will absolutely predate free-ranging or feral cats. If your cat is outside, it is open to predation. Coyotes are the species that get the most notoriety for taking cats, but it's not just coyotes. Bobcats will take domestic cats, alligators will take domestic cats, large raptors could potentially take a small domestic cat. If you're in panther country, your cat's at risk of being predated by a panther. There's a lot of bad things that can happen to cats when they are free ranging outside. Coyotes are one of them. You can curb that though. You can prevent predation entirely from wildlife by just keeping your cat indoors. Small dogs can also be at risk from coyotes. We have had dogs in Florida, small dogs in Florida, that have been predated upon by coyotes. In almost all of these cases, this is a small dog that's not on a leash, that's not with a person, and that's not in a fenced-in yard. It's usually a small dog that's let outside to go to the bathroom after dark or first thing in the morning. Coyote happens to be there, takes advantage of the opportunity. By small dog, I'm talking under 20 pounds and under. But again, it is not just coyotes that will take dogs if they're unattended. So will bobcats, so will alligators, so will panthers if you're in panther country. There's a lot of bad things that can happen to dogs too when they're unattended. To put it into perspective, remember those pictures I showed you a few moments ago, those trail camera pictures where we had a bobcat and a coyote on camera? I also had a house cat, a domestic cat, on that camera. Look at what time the cat was there, and now look at the time the coyote was there. That cat was there just a few minutes ahead of the coyote. That cat is taking some risks. I don't know if this was a landowner's cat. I don't know if this was a free-ranging cat or a feral cat. I don't know if this cat survived. But you've got two predators on that camera the same evening that the cat showed up. These are really good reasons why we strongly encourage keeping cats indoors and small dogs on short leashes. I'll talk more about dogs here in just a moment. Now, we're often also asked too, well, what about me? Am I safe from coyotes? And the answer to that question is yes, you are safe. Attacks by coyotes on humans are exceedingly rare. To put it into perspective, I'm put this slide together to compare dog attacks versus coyote attacks. So between 1970 and 2015, there have been approximately 9 attacks per year by coyotes on people. Most of those times where the coyote is biting a person, it's because the person's doing something they shouldn't be doing, like trying to feed the coyote a hot dog or getting between the coyote and its young, or the person is a victim of someone doing something they shouldn't have been doing, like the coyote's been hand fed by other people, and it bites somebody else who wasn't involved in the situation at all. In that same time frame, 2 people have been killed by coyotes in the United States and Canada. Now compare that to domestic dogs. There's almost 1,000 emergency room visits in this country every day from dog bites. There are 5 million cases a year that require medical treatment. And between 2015 and 2020, 236 people were killed by dogs in the United States alone. So statistically speaking, your chances of being bitten by a coyote, especially if you're doing everything right, is very, very small. I think last I checked, you're more likely to be hit by lightning than you are to be bitten by a coyote. So I think some of those myths and misconceptions I talked about earlier really drive people to be afraid of coyotes. And coyotes really are not the monsters that most of us have been led to believe. So maybe you're asking yourself at this point, well, can't we just get rid of them? Can't they just go away, right? Florida didn't have them before. Can't they just go away? No, they can't. Coyotes are here to stay. Again, I talked a lot about their historical persecution and how they were able to expand their range from the western United States to the eastern United States. So eradication efforts in other states, especially out west, has failed for centuries. There's also a question of, should we get rid of coyotes? Should we eradicate them? Because eradication does not jive with modern conservation practices of today for native species. Coyotes have pretty big breeding dynamics. I talked about this earlier, right? They can have 6 pups per litter, and that's dependent on food, so they can replace their numbers fairly quickly. They're territorial with high replacement. They are adaptable and intelligent, and they are here to stay. It is possible to capture one coyote for, let's say it's a nuisance coyote. Let's say it's busting onto a porch or denning underneath someone's home. It's possible to capture one nuisance individual, but even that's really difficult. Coyotes are notoriously difficult to capture, even for professional trappers. So again, while it's possible to remove one individual, you can't remove them all. And again, should we remove them all? Again, from that conservation mind frame, eradication efforts really just don't line up with conservation efforts of today. So what can you do? How do you prevent problems with coyotes? The number one thing you can do is to secure your attractant. So what's an attractant? An attractant is anything that can attract a dog or a cat or a raccoon. So trash is a really big thing. So if one thing you can do right now today is secure your garbage. Make sure it's in a sturdy can. If you don't have a sturdy can, try to keep it in your garage or a structure until the morning of trash day instead of the night before. If it goes out on the curb the night before, you're giving wildlife an opportunity to get into your garbage. Also, I know it says it on the slide, but I didn't say it yet. Don't feed coyotes. It is illegal to feed coyotes in Florida. We know that's when problems occur. When they start to make that connection that people mean food, coyotes have had a history of being aggressive towards people, and that's what we don't want. Clean up fallen fruit, pet food, and bird feeders. Again, these things are high in calories. Coyote or other wildlife doesn't have to spend a lot of energy to get it. And these are major draws to coyotes and other wildlife in urban communities. Keep cats indoors. That's the best way to keep them safe from coyotes and other wildlife. And for dogs, keep dogs on leashes when you're walking them or supervise when they're outside, especially small dogs under 20 pounds. It is very, very rare for a coyote to take a dog that's on a leash. I think it's only happened a few times in Florida. But we have had coyotes try to go after small dogs that are on retractable leashes. So I would definitely encourage you not to use a retractable where your small dog could get, 30 feet away from you. The bad thing about retractables is by the time you were to notice there was an issue, you're too far away to intervene from an interaction between the dog and a coyote, or the dog and a coral snake, or the dog and another dog, or dog and a cane toad. It's just not worth it. So we suggest keeping dogs on a short leash, like 6-foot leash, when out walking. For dogs in fenced-in yards, coyotes can jump fences that are under 6 feet. So if you have a fence that's under 6 feet, you just want to maybe out there and present with your dog just in case, or make noise before you go outside, especially after dark, in case there is a coyote in your yard. You're giving it a chance to get out before your dog comes into the picture. You can also haze coyotes. So yeah, hazing is not the best word to use here. I know a lot of us associate hazing with college and fraternities, and that's not quite what I mean. What I mean by hazing is scaring the coyote off. This is getting the animal's attention, reminding it that humans are dominant and that it needs to yield to you. There's a lot of different things you can do to haze coyotes. I've got a couple of them listed here, like using whistles, using your car horn, using a motion activated sprinkler. These are all things you can do to scare coyotes away. So what's the point in scaring coyotes away? The point is you're reminding them that humans are dominant and they need to yield to you. And you know what? It's really not okay for the coyote to be walking up your driveway. What we're finding is that when people encounter coyotes in urban environments, like on a driveway or on a sidewalk, they go, oh my gosh, it's a coyote. And they get in their house or they get in their car and they bring out their phone and they go to take a picture of it. And what's the coyote learning? Oh, okay, all I have to do is show up and these crazy two-legged creatures go run away and hide. I'm the dominant one. That's not what we want to be teaching coyotes. We don't want them to learn that they quote unquote own the place. They don't. You do. So the point here is every time you see a coyote, especially if it's in an area where you would rather not see it, like your driveway, get after it. Let it know it's not allowed to be there. You're making it move. You're making it yield. Get up, move out of your way. You want to do this until you can no longer see the animal. If you haze and the coyote gets up and walks away and you stop hazing, coyote's going to learn, oh, okay, all I have to do is get up and start walking. That crazy person will stop yelling at me. Make them feel uncomfortable or unwanted until you can no longer see the animal. If you do all of these things, you secure your pets, you secure your attractants, and you haze the coyotes, they're not moving out. They've established a territory. There's natural food sustaining them in your area. But what they are going to do is they're going to start being more respectful of people. They might shift their activity and come out at night instead of coming out during the day. They may not want to come around your driveway anymore or your backyard because every time they do, they're getting harassed by someone. And that's the coyotes you want. You want to live with the ones that are respectful of people. We have a video on our website on how to haze coyotes. I didn't include it in the presentation because I wanted to make sure it didn't glitch. But if you go to our website, that's down there at the bottom, myfwc.com/coyotes, you'll find it. Or you can go to Google and put in FWC haze coyote video. It's about 3.5 minutes. You're going to see some crazy person on a golf course, like yelling and waving incessantly at a black coyote. I will tell you that crazy person is me. I'm not that big of a person. That coyote, as soon as I got after it, it got up, it started trotting, it looked over its shoulder, it looked at me like I was a monster, like I was Bigfoot or something. And that was exactly the reaction I was looking for. That particular animal on that golf course that I hazed that day had never been hazed before. This was a coyote that was sunning itself in sand traps. Like, that's how comfortable it was because nobody was making it feel uncomfortable and it was starting to think it owned the place. So again, that video is on our website. Check it out when you have a minute. And so I'm going to kind of wrap up the presentation. I want to I'm going to summarize a little bit and leave you with some facts on coyotes. Adult coyotes weigh between 25 and 40 pounds. They occur in every state and nearly every large city in the United States. There is a huge research project going on coyotes right now in Chicago, of all places. They're in Chicago, they're in LA, they're in New York. Washington, D.C. has recently had confirmed sightings. So if they can live in those places, they can really live anywhere. Attacks by coyotes on humans are exceedingly rare. Coyotes will kill cats and small dogs if given the opportunity, just like other wildlife species. And we didn't talk about rabies too much. I mentioned that they can carry rabies, but this is pretty rare. We've only had 2 coyotes to ever test positive for rabies in Florida. So I'm going to leave you with some advice. Don't feed them. Please don't feed them. It is illegal to feed coyotes in Florida, as I mentioned earlier. If you think or suspect someone is feeding them, even if they're not targeting the coyote, like let's say they are putting food out for ducks and coyotes are coming in, that's something that FWC can address. You can make those reports anonymously if you wish, and I'll put the phone number up in just a second where you can make those reports. Prevent access to garbage and pet food. This is huge. This is what's pulling coyotes into our communities, so securing those items will give them less reason to come close to homes. Keep cats indoors and have small dogs in a short leash or well fenced in yard. Remember, non-retractable is better. Non-retractable leash rather. Follow those hazing recommendations to consistently frighten coyotes away. I would suggest every time you see a coyote, if it's in a spot where you're not comfortable with it being, go ahead and haze it. If you're comfortable, of course. And in the very unlikely event that a coyote were to approach you, you'd want to lift up your pet or your child off the ground and be prepared to defend yourself. Please do not run. Coyotes will give chase just like domestic dogs will. We've had multiple examples of people running from coyotes. When coyotes were minding their own business, they saw a coyote at 40 yards, the person turned around and ran, and the coyote gave chase. Please don't run from a coyote. Be prepared to defend yourself. But again, this is a very, very unlikely event. Who should you call when there's a problem, if you have a problem with a coyote in Florida? You should call us. Our regional office is on North Lake Boulevard, so we're fairly close to you all in Jupiter. That's our phone number on the screen. We have dedicated staff who are trained to take calls and talk to the public on coyotes and other wildlife. We're open from 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. If you have an emergency with a coyote or you'd like to report someone feeding coyotes, you can call our wildlife alert hotline. They're on the screen. We're available there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And again, you can make reports anonymously if you wish. If you're to the point as a landowner where you feel a coyote should be removed, we're going to refer you to a trapper. We have a list of trappers on our website. So landowners do have the right to remove nuisance coyotes on their properties if they wish. But I'm going to caveat that by saying what I said earlier. Coyotes are notoriously difficult to capture. It's their nature. They're really intelligent. It's just how they are. And if you catch the right coyote, for example, but you don't secure your attractants like garbage or pet food, you're just going to have another coyote in there. So it makes a lot more sense, and it's a lot cheaper to secure your attractants and try to prevent those problems from coyotes from starting at all, so you don't have to get to this point. I will happily stop here and stop sharing my screen and take some questions. I really appreciate everyone's attention and coming out this evening. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I learned so much. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to add those to the chat. And Angeline, you can see the chat? Okay, perfect.
I can now, yes.
Okay, good. I want to make sure you're able to see it so I don't have to necessarily read it out loud. But feel free to put it in the chat for just a couple of minutes. We'll hang out.
Rebecca, I don't think I can answer the question in the chat.
That's okay. We do have, we have recorded it. I see that Amy is also on here recording as well. I would like to hope that we'll be able to put it on YouTube and have captions available for you, Miss, I believe that's Winda.
Okay, so I see a question about squirrel and bird feeding. So if you have a neighbor that is feeding squirrels or birds and a coyote, a raccoon, a fox, or a sandhill crane were to show up at that site, then yes, you could report that to FWC. Even though they're not necessarily targeting the coyote or fox or raccoon or sandhill crane, if those animals are coming in, then that would be a violation. Typically, when our officers respond to that, they try to educate first. They don't like to come out and start writing citations, and we want to give everybody a chance to do the right thing. And there are ways that people can still feed birds and squirrels in a way that doesn't attract other wildlife. Looks like Joan asked, do you go to schools for presentations? I haven't specifically been to schools, but we do have a program with an FWC called the Florida Youth Conservation Center Network that I believe do go to schools. And recently we see a lot of coyote activity in Abacoa. Yeah. So the calls that my staff have been getting about coyotes from the Jupiter area, we've gotten a lot from Abacoa and the Heights. We've also been getting quite a few from Jupiter Country Club and around Riverbend Park. Thanks, Amy.
Yes, it's sweet. I think Linda here has her hand raised. Let me see if there's a way. Linda, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Linda, go ahead. You have a question?
Yes, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Angeline, can you hear her?
I can.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Is there a time of day or night where coyotes are more active? Because I do have community cats that I keep at my house, and after this presentation, I'm gonna try to keep them in. There's some that I just can't keep in, but is there a time of day or night where they're more active?
Yeah, it's a great question. They are typically more active at dawn and dusk. However, they can be out at any time. If you notice in the presentation, almost every picture I shared was like daylight hours, like around noon. So yes, they're more active around dusk and dawn, but you should expect them at any time, especially this time of year when they have young, that they're going to be on the move a bit more to try to find more food to feed their young.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring my cats in. I have 9 of them, but 5 of them are indoors. I'm gonna bring the other 4 inside. So I do appreciate the advice and the guidance and everything. I don't think I've ever lost a cat to a coyote, but there's
And
a chance.
I hope you don't. And I think that would be a wise thing to do. One thing we've heard from some folks that have or that care for community cats, like you, is they'll build a catio for the cats. So that's where they can kind of still be outside but be safe. I know that's putting in potentially a lot of money, but that's another option.
Right. That's something that I've considered, and that's something that I would like to do at some point. Thank you, Angeline.
You're
Rebecca.
welcome. And I saw a comment from Joan that you see one every night at 8 p.m. Yeah, coyotes are creatures of habit. When they patrol their territory, they kind of show up on the same line at around the same time every evening. So you caught that very well.
Awesome. So it looks like we kind of wound down on questions there. We have everyone saying thank you. And we want to thank you as well. So I want to thank everyone that attended this program. I really, really want to thank Miss Angeline for coming and hanging out with us. I do want to say real quick to wrap it up, please come and visit the sanctuary. We are open Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. We do offer programs at the sanctuary. You can come, there's no admission fee. We just request donations. It's how we do keep our doors open and our animals fed and healthy. You can go onto our website to donate. You can go onto our website to find out about our baby season shower that we're kind of hosting right now. Also, we are in the midst of a big move. So you can learn all about our capital campaign and our move out to Rocky Pines campus. So our website is bushwildlife.org, and Busch is spelled B-U-S-C-H, not like a burning bush, but like Busch the beer. So thank you all so much. And Angeline, again, thank you. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks for having me, Rebecca.
You're welcome.